Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another beautiful Monday. Welcome to the Productivity Show, a podcast where we believe that you can get the important things done without having to sacrifice your health, family, and things that matter to you. My name is Tan. I'm the founder and CEO of Asian Efficiency, where we help people become more productive at work and in life. And today I'm, of course, joined by my co-host, the COO of Asian Efficiency, Brooks Duncan. How are you today, Brooks?
I'm good. We're recording this a little earlier than normal. I haven't quite decided if I have more or less energy because of that. I guess we'll find out as we go through the episode, but I'm really happy to be here.
Well, I guess I'm going to say that it also depends what time you went to bed last night. And that is kind of like related to today's topic because we're going to be talking about sleep tracking. Now, according to the CDC, they have research that says that 1 in 3 adults don't get enough sleep. But if I had to have my own observations included in that, I would say that it's probably a lot higher, that number. So that's why we want to talk about this particular topic today, because we are known for the T framework, which stands for time, energy, and attention. And if you've been following us for a while, you know that energy is a huge component to productivity. And one of the biggest drivers behind it is sleep. If you sleep pretty well on a regular basis, you're going to feel more energetic. And as a result, you are going to be more productive. We always like to say that sleep is a force multiplier. However, the opposite is also true. If you kind of skip a few nights where you don't have great sleep, and you're just suffering from like sleep deprivation, then over time you start to see that your performance at work and your ability to focus, your tendency to procrastinate goes up quite a bit as well. So we want to make sure that we kind of give you some actionable tools today and insights that will help you get better sleep, and also how to track your sleep. So we're going to be talking specifically about that. So even if you don't feel like you have sleep problems, knowing what influences your sleep, good and bad, will help you know what to do, when to do it, and also make sure that you're prepared and armed to do the things you want to do to get a great night's sleep. So we're going to be talking about the easiest way to start without having to download or install or buy anything. We're also going to be talking about the best sleep tracking devices and how to use them, and then also how to use all this data that you have, whether it's from your personal information that you collect to the devices that you use. Like, how do you put it all together and actually put it into an action plan that you can use? So we're going to be covering all that here today. Brooks, what are we talking about next week?
Yeah, next week I'm going to be talking to Alexis Hasselberger, who's a productivity and time management coach. She works with a lot of people in larger organizations and corporates and stuff like that. She helps them get things done with less stress. So we're going to be talking about that and a bunch of other strategies. It's a really fun episode, so I'm looking forward to that one. So that's next week. But this week, we always start our episodes with our top 3 resources. So these are things that are making us more productive or that we're loving these days. And so I'll just start with that. And the first one is actually one that I don't personally have experience with, but a member of our Productivity Academy, Kimberly, recommends it a lot. And that is a ChiliSleep Uller sleep system. So this is one of a category of tools I'm actually tempted to buy myself. So I might actually buy it as a result of this episode. But basically what it does is it allows you to control the temperature in your bed, and you can do it only on one side. So if you have one partner who sleeps hot, like I do, my wife, and one partner who sleeps cold, like my wife does, and one partner who sleeps hot, like I do, you can kind of control it, and each person can have things just right. So that's the ChiliSleep Uller sleep system. That's number one. Number 2 is a sleep mask, and there's a million different types out there. I know, Tan, your favorite one is just like a kind of cheaper one that you got from Target. My favorite one is one I got for free from Philippine Airlines, and for whatever reason, it's just perfect for me. But however you do it, find a sleep mask that you find really, really comfortable, and it can make a really big difference to your sleep no matter where you are. That's number 2. And number 3 is we thought we'd reference one of our resources, which is called Serene Sleep. So this is a guide that we created to help you get a better and more consistent sleep. It's really fast to go through, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes as well. And in fact, we'll have links to everything, including Tan's favorite sleep mask, in the productivityshow.com/418. All right, let's get into it. Now, Tan, I wanted to ask you about this because Asian Efficiency, I wasn't here since the beginning, but clearly you were. And Asian Efficiency actually has a long history of tying the benefits of sleep with productivity. A lot of people think of Asian efficiency kind of starting with OmniFocus stuff, which is definitely was a big thing for us. But a lot of people might not realize that AE's very first resource was actually a now retired guide called Better Sleep. So maybe you could talk about why you felt like that was the place to start, and why you felt that that was so important.
So if we have to go all the way back, Asian efficiency started in 2011. So this is like 11 years now, and it started off as a passion project. So I was always writing every single week about what made me more productive and all the things I've learned, and kind of documenting publicly what I was learning and discovering, and kind of sharing best practices with friends and family. And then it kind of took a life of its own after about a year and a half. And so by accident, it turned into a business. And because I was just getting so many requests from people to have like a paid course or something, or like coaching or consulting. And as I was going through this process, I was trying to figure out, okay, how do we turn this into a business? This is where you have to actually sell something and then make some sort of revenue, right? So you can pay yourself and I continue to do all of this good stuff. And so as I was doing my research, I noticed that a lot of people had trouble with sleep. And this is, again, back around 2012 now at this point. So I was very early on to realize that, one, if you sleep better, and there's a lot of sleep research that shows this, that your performance goes up. This is pretty well known in the military, among professional athletes, but it wasn't as mainstream as it is nowadays. And so as I was doing my research, I was trying to figure out, like, what's the biggest pain point that people are having? And I noticed that sleep was actually a huge pain point. And so that kind of inspired me to say, hey, I should create a audio guide on helping people get better sleep. Hence why we created this audio guide called Better Sleep at that time. Now I will say, when we launched it, it was a total flop. Nobody actually bought it, even though I saw that it was a big pain point and something I wish people knew about. And so one of the mistakes I made was I was doing research on this on the internet, like going through Reddit and different forums, but I wasn't actually catering to the people that were following Asian efficiency. So that was a very tough pill to swallow. And we made some adjustments, and eventually we figured out that we had to create an OmniFocus course to help people with that, because that's what people really wanted. And so going back to the whole sleep idea is just, I realized very early on, like, hey, this is a big problem. People are not talking about this enough, but the market wasn't quite ready for that yet. So it was kind of a mismatch. And so if you've been following us for a while, including someone here on the live stream, Joel, since 2012, I believe Joel has been following us. So you probably have noticed that, yes, we did talk about sleep early on, but it didn't become more common until in the last few years, because people started to, I think, become more accepted to the idea of, like, hey, sleep is actually very important. And all the other podcasters are talking about it and so on. And so now it's more in the consciousness of other people.
Yeah, we have an upcoming podcast episode that I recorded with somebody who his company basically invented Apple Pay, but like 15 years too early. So, everything crashed and they lost all the money. But it just goes to show you that, a good idea is a good idea, but timing is also super, super important. And yeah, I think people weren't talking about sleep as much back then, but they definitely are now. So that's one reason why we wanted to do this episode. And I really wanted to do it with you, Tan, because amongst anyone I know, like, not to pump up your tires too much, but amongst anyone I know, you're like the king of sleep tracking, I feel like. And not only sleep tracking, but actually using that information to improve your productivity in your life in general. Like, you're always sharing, like, hey, I did X last night and I realized Y, and here's how my sleep score is, and here's the changes I'm making. Like, you're one of the most proactive people I know when it comes to using this information. And we're going to get into the mechanics of how you do it and stuff like that later in the episode. But maybe you can talk a little bit about what you personally use sleep tracking for, and kind of in general how it helps you out.
Yeah, so the big benefit of being early on this whole idea of, like, measuring your sleep quality and using it to enhance your performance is that over the last 10 years, I've been able to run a lot of different experiments and then also share that information with other people, whether it's clients, people that I know in my personal life, and kind of see how it helped them and affect them. And I've done all sorts of stuff from like, manually tracking stuff to now having like all these like wearables to trying stuff in the daytime to trying stuff in the nighttime. Like I have all this information now. And so um, I'm always trying to combine, what's scientifically proven versus what works for me, right? And then be careful about what I recommend. But what I found most helpful is once you kind of figure out the 80-20 of what works for you and what matters to your lifestyle, then it's actually relatively easy to optimize your sleep. The tricky part is if your lifestyle is a little bit more dynamic, meaning if every now and then you travel or you change time zones, or like maybe you tend to change your schedule every now and then, like I really feel for the people who have like night shifts every now and then, because it makes it very difficult to have like some sort of sleep routine. And like one of the big insights you'll get from this episode is your sleep routine is one of the biggest factors for your quality of sleep. So the more consistent it is, the better it is. But yeah, for me, like once I know what my sleep hygiene and pattern looks like, it really changes how I tackle my day. So, for example, if I have a bad night of sleep, it changes how I approach the day in terms of like how much workload I tend to approach, to what time I plan to go to bed later this night, or even if I cancel plans later tonight because I want to catch up on sleep so that I can perform the next day and stuff like that.
Yeah, the more information you have is the more information that you can then use to make changes. And that's what this episode is about. So, we are going to get into 3 ways that you can track your sleep and actually use that to improve your life. Before we do that, I just want to give a quick shout out to our TPS Plus members. So, you can go to theproductivityshow.com/plus. So, TPS Plus is kind of our special upgraded version of the Productivity Show. You get episodes a week early, you get episodes with no ads, which a lot of people like, as much as we love our advertisers. And you get things like the show notes that Tan and I use to record. So the show notes that we're looking at right now, you'll be able to download and check out our little comments and what didn't make it into the show. And if you're an annual member, which is actually it kind of surprised me, most people actually do the annual plan, you get a 1 tweak a week t-shirt, which is a shirt I wear all the time, actually. And you can get one too. So again, you can go to theproductivityshow.com/plus to check all that out. But let's get into the sleep tracking. And we'll start with tip number 1, which is to start simple and start low tech. We're going to be talking about lots of apps and tools and stuff like that. For myself, every day that I journal, so I have a regular journaling routine. I have a series of prompts. That's just what works for me. And one of them is, how are you feeling today? And I kind of use that as a way to record how my sleep went. Because like you said, I found that more often than not, my night sleep has a huge impact on how I'm feeling and operating throughout the day. And so I've kind of used my regular journaling practice as a way to track my sleep. And I wanted to bring that up because there's lots of apps, there's lots of devices that you can use to track your sleep, and they're awesome. And we're going to be getting into all of them. This would be a not super helpful episode if we didn't do that. But if you don't like the idea of committing to yet another app, or if you don't feel like buying a device right now, or maybe you just want to get a small, easy start and try tracking out, you really don't need to buy or install anything to get a lot of the benefit. You were talking about 80-20 before. And you can get started just by keeping a sleep journal. And a sleep journal doesn't have to be anything special. It could be just a pen and paper at the side of your nightstand, or it could be like a notebook that you write in down on the kitchen counter or something like that when you go downstairs or when you leave your bedroom. It can be something very simple that you just write down some observations about your sleep, and you kind of do that on a regular basis. And you could note things like, do you feel differently if you change your bedtime or your wake up time, or both? Maybe do you feel differently if you change things like room temperature, or the exercise you do in a day and when you exercise? Maybe you note down like, hey, I had some caffeine and this impacted my sleep, or record your times that you got up, or record maybe when you fell asleep if you can remember. any, all that sort of things. You can note down your observations about your sleep, and you can get a lot of really helpful information over time just with that pen and paper. If you can keep that habit, then over time you can use that information to really improve your sleep. So like I said, you don't have to necessarily start with apps and tools, although they're great. You can just start with a pen and paper if that's what works for you.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to get into sleep tracking, pen and paper is fine to start with. And I did this for a while, but now having gone to the other side where you have all this wearable tech, I would say that if you're going to go into this, I would go for the wearable tech 9 out of 10, just because the information you're going to get is so much easier to measure, and also much more accurate. Plus, they also aggregate all the data for you, so you don't have to manually do it yourself. So it's kind of like, yeah, you can do it yourself, or you can get an app or wearable, and that will make it like 10 times easier. So if you're really serious about this, I would say go with the wearable option, because this manual process is just a lot of work. And if you may be that diligent and disciplined, I would say it could work, but the wearable is like 10 times better.
Well, let's use that to loop into tip number 2 then, which is to use a sleep tracking device or app or tool, something that will help you track your sleep. And so Tanya, you mentioned that you're into that. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I did the whole manual process. I didn't find it that useful personally. Like, it's just you're kind of like not really quantifying anything. It was just kind of a quantitative assessment of like how you felt and blah 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 blah. Versus like if you actually were like an Aura ring or an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or anything like that, an actual wearable that you wear on your body, the accuracy is so much more insightful. So you can use apps, right? And there's a bunch of apps that you can get on the App Store, whether it's like Sleep Cycle or Rise Signs. Like, they're all great too. However, they are not as accurate compared to the wearables. So the way they typically measure stuff is through the apps. They measure like noise levels, and so they kind of figure out like if you tend to move a lot, they can kind of monitor that, and also if you snore and that kind of thing. But it's not as accurate because it cannot, for example, measure your body temperature, which also affects your sleep. It can't measure, like, if you're really quiet, you might even escape and actually get out of bed, right? And not even you can bypass their sound detection system and stuff like that. So it's not as accurate, and so they always try to estimate like what your light sleep was like and deep sleep and so on. And so there's stuff like that. And then I think there's even like a mattress sleep tracker that goes on your mattress to record your body movements. I personally haven't tried one of these. I am familiar with them, but I'm personally a big Aura Ring user. So if you've been following us for a while, you probably heard me talk about this. And what a lot of people don't know is I'm actually kind of like into watches. So I was actually never a big fan of the Apple Watch because I like to wear mechanical watches. And so for all the watch nerds that we have here, I'm sure you will appreciate this too, that getting a digital watch is it's just not quite the same, especially if you have a watch collection. I have like a 5 watch collection. So I was never a big fan of wearing something like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch because I like to wear watches. So when I saw the Aura Ring, I was like, oh yeah, this actually fits my style a lot better, even though I'm not a person that typically wears rings whatsoever. But I started to try it out. I saw other people here in Austin wear them. They all loved it and raved about it. So I said, okay, you know what? Let's give this a try. And it's probably been like 2.5 years now, almost 3 years now. And honestly, one of the best decisions I've made in terms of my own health, my sleep tracking. It goes way beyond sleep tracking, but in the scope of this episode, I would say one of the things I've learned about myself is like what really affects my sleep. I thought I was pretty informed about my sleep and what makes for good sleep until I got the Aura Ring. And then the level of information and kind of like guidance that I got from it was so much more impactful than what I could do by myself. And that's why I want to say that, yeah, you can do it on your own using pen and paper, but knowing what I know now, I would just highly recommend people just jump straight into the apps.
Yeah, that's the thing. A sleep journal is great, but it relies on you doing it, like you said. So if you don't write in your journal, you're not going to learn anything. It also kind of relies on your memory. You might not remember or even realize that you woke up a bunch of times during the night. So that is a problem. It's also subjective. Like, what does good sleep and bad sleep mean? It doesn't really tell you that much. It relies on your judgment, and it's kind of influenced by how you're feeling. And then it's not visual. You can't see these kind of improvements and declining over time. You read through it, you can kind of get a sense of it. And a sleep journal is definitely better than nothing, but it's not going to give you as much useful information as a sleep tracker, which kind of like fixes all these. They can tell you how much sleep do you need to feel or perform well. Does your perception of how you sleep actually match reality, which can often become very different? Do you have a sleep debt? I know that's one thing, Tan, you've mentioned you like Rise Science for, is it kind of tells you what your sleep debt is, and how much that is impacting you. And then you can kind of tell the difference between your types of sleep, help you figure out when you should go to bed. There's a bunch of things that these apps can tell you that there's just no way that a sleep journal can do. And by the way, a sleep journal and a sleep tracker don't have to be mutually exclusive necessarily. You can do both. You could just jot down some kind of like more subjective thoughts about your sleep, but also have the more objective data from a sleep tracker. So if you're able to commit to the sleep journal, you get the best of both worlds. But if you had to pick one, a sleep tracker is definitely going to give you more useful information.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you want to do accounting by hand, you totally can do that, right? If you want to collect all the receipts and balance your books on paper and do all that stuff, like great. But if you can use something like QuickBooks or Zero, that is like 10 times easier. You're gonna go with the technology solution all the time. Like I feel the same way about sleep tracking. So if you're going to go into this and you really want to commit to the idea of like, hey, I want to optimize my sleep, like get one of the wearables. Like personally, I'm a big Aura Ring fan, but if you like to use an Apple Watch, you can do that as well. The only downside with an Apple Watch, again, is like if you like to wear watches or something, you can't. I mean, you can kind of wear both, but I think it always looks kind of clunky. But the other thing is like the charging time for an Apple Watch is usually like every night or every other night. So you can't really wear it at night in that sense, right? So whereas the Aura Ring charges maybe like once every 5 or 6 days or so. So it makes it really easy to wear stuff. And one thing I've learned over the years is there's actually so many different factors that affect our quality of sleep. So even, for example, the amount of sunlight that you get makes a big difference in terms of how you feel and what you experience at nighttime. And so I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Brooks, but like maybe when you went to Mexico a few weeks ago, your sleep was maybe a lot better. And I see this when I go to Florida a lot, is when I'm by the ocean and in the sun quite a bit. I sleep like a baby at night versus when I'm at home and it's like cloudy and I'm sure it's even worse in Vancouver.
Yeah, you just described every day in Vancouver, frankly. In the live stream for our productivity members and TPS Plus members, Joel brings up a good point, which is, we're talking about these sleep apps and these sleep devices, and you're saying, then you kind of need to know what wearables and services talk to each other. And he used to find, back when he first started trying this out, that the problem was that you would get stuck in these ecosystems. Like if you're to have a Fitbit, all your data would be in the Fitbit ecosystem, and that sort of thing. I think things like Apple Health has really changed that quite a bit, in the sense that a lot of apps and devices now, and I think Google has a similar thing, but a lot of apps and devices will now allow you, and it's totally optional, to sync the information to Apple Health. So you can have different things read from each other. And that really helps prevent a lot of this lock-in that used to be back in the day. All right. So tip number 2 was using a sleep tracker. Tip number 1 was using a sleep journal. Whichever way you want to do it, collecting this information is one thing. And I think a lot of us do it, right? A lot of us will have an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or whatever, and maybe we even wear it while we sleep, and, it'll tell us our sleep information. And, you look at it and it's like, oh, Well, that's interesting. But then we never actually do anything with it. So, tip number 3 is to take all this sleep information that you're collecting, however it is that you're doing it, and actually put it to use to improve your sleep. Now, Tan, I mentioned, I hyped you up before saying that I consider you very good at this sort of thing. Do you have an example of like how you actually concretely used information from your sleep tracking and actually use that to improve your sleep?
Yeah. So here's the beautiful thing about using a sleep tracking app like the Aura Ring. Um, as someone who is pretty well versed and educated about the power of sleep and how sleep works and what affects sleep, I would say if you use an app like that, you actually don't have to know anything about sleep, and you can still get like almost like 100% of all the benefits. Because the cool thing about an app like that is it will actually tell you based on data and patterns, what you can do to improve your sleep. So, for example, it will send you a notification like 2 hours before your ideal bedtime to say, hey, now is a great time to start winding down. Right. And so we talk about like evening rituals or evening routines, right? Where we try to coach people and say, hey, like make sure ideally an hour before you go to bed that you kind of start shutting down and just like focus on like going through the routine, preparing for a great night of sleep. You don't actually have to understand this concept at all. Like the app will actually remind you to do that. So that's like another example. Or another thing I've learned that actually was reminded of through the app was if you have a big meal before you go to sleep, it actually hurts your quality of sleep, because what ends up happening is that your body is actually focusing on processing the food and digesting it, rather than when you're going to bed immediately trying to focus on recovery and synthesizing information and making sure that you're actually sleeping. So one of the things they can detect is based on your heart rate and stuff and body temperature. It can predict and sometimes say like, hey, it seems like maybe you had a late night meal last night. If you want to improve your sleep, we actually recommend that you have like your last meal maybe 4 hours before your bedtime. So you can kind of learn things like that otherwise you would have to follow us to kind of really know about that sort of stuff, or read some books on sleep. But this is where the app is so helpful, because you don't actually have to do any studying or learning. You can just follow the app and they will kind of coach you through that. And that technology has gone better over the years as well. However, if you can combine both, obviously that makes it more powerful. So for example, how I use a lot of those insights now is, I've discovered, like, this is from tracking so much stuff, like if I have like a meal before bedtime, as long as it's under 400 calories, I can typically sleep okay and it won't affect my sleep. But if it goes like over 400 calories, then it does tend to affect my sleep. So that's like a really intricate detail that I discovered from tracking, but that's something I discovered, right? So other things I've learned is, if I do any sort of sauna or cold tub the day of, my REM sleep goes up quite a bit. My deep sleep actually goes down a little bit because I do most of the quote unquote recovery when I was in there. However, if I do a flow tank, my REM sleep goes like through the roof. My average REM sleep, I think, is about an hour, 40 minutes or so. But if I do a flow tank, it can go up sometimes to like 3.5 hours, which is like insane. Basically, it's very unusual. So I also like to use the app Rise Science. So this is something we've been mentioning quite a bit. And the reason I like that is what other apps don't do, even though they could totally do this because they have all the data, but for some reason they don't display this, is Rise Science has one feature which will show you how much sleep that you have. And sleep that is basically calculated on the last 14 days of your sleep patterns. And so it basically tells you like, hey, if you have like over 12 hours of sleep that, like, your performance is very low, versus if it's under 5 hours of sleep that, your performance is very high. The closest I've gone was like maybe 2 hours or something. And the worst I've ever gone was like 14 hours. So I've seen both spectrums, and I can say like it definitely, I've seen like a strong correlation between that data and how I just generally feel. Because you can feel generally pretty good, but if you have sleep that, I can just tell like the 10% difference. And so that information is really powerful, but again, it can be overwhelming too, and it shouldn't paralyze you. But I would say if you're looking to improve your sleep, the 80/20 is go to bed earlier so you can get more sleep, because most of us need more sleep. Ideally, shoot for an hour if you can. So my one strategy I always talk about is like go to bed 5 minutes earlier and add 5 minutes every single day. So if you go to bed at midnight, go to bed at 11:55 tonight, tomorrow at 11:50, the day after 11:45, and in about 2 weeks you'll get an extra hour of sleep in, and it's a very consistent routine that you can do. And then the other thing is having an evening routine. So the app usually recommends, or at least the Oura Ring app usually recommends, like 2 hours. I find that an hour before bed works just as well. But if you do two, it works even better. I definitely know the huge difference in that. So yeah, those are some things that you can pay attention to.
Yeah, these apps can give a lot of good advice, like Sleep Cycle, which used to be a sponsor of the productivity show. They're not sponsoring this particular episode. I know they have a lot of good, useful information for helping you get a better sleep. In the live stream, Productivity Academy member Giacomo is suggesting, as he often would, creating a shortcut in the iOS shortcuts to read your Apple Health data and then use it to give you like personal requests for inputs about how the sleep was and that sort of thing. So that's a great suggestion as well. Another thing you can do is pair whatever data you're getting from your apps or your sleep journal and pair it with things like your calendar. If you see that you regularly have things going on that might be impacting your sleep, like if you have some sort of meeting on a regular basis and you find yourself sleeping poorly before that meeting, that could be something you could notice. I know for me, like I noticed I was having not great sleeps when I was kind of like looking at my calendar. I realized that I was often having not great sleeps before I had early morning Orange Theory classes. So and I'd have to wake up at 5 to go to that class. And it, I think I realized that part of the problem was it's kind of like when you have an early morning flight, like you start stressing out that you're not going to get enough sleep before and wake up for the flight. But also I was worried about waking up my wife with my alarm. So what I started doing on those early Orange Theory days was sleep in another room for those nights. And actually made a big difference. I think my kids were kind of worried because they'd ask me, why is dad sleeping in another room? I think they were worried we were fighting or something. But no, just wanted to make sure I had a good sleep. So these are the sorts of things you can kind of like look at the relationships between your sleep, that your information that you're collecting, and what else is going on in your work or your personal life. All
Okay,
right.
just to go off script, Brooks, this is maybe a hot take. So I've had this conversation a few times with other people. Is do you think most people would benefit from sleeping separately versus sleeping in the same bed?
I believe that they would. To be totally honest, I've been married 20 years. My wife and I both have, like I said, different sleeping temperatures and stuff like that. I think we would probably both, honestly, we would probably both sleep better separately. I actually do believe that. Actually, I was just listening to an episode of the Tim Ferriss show. My wife and I were on a road trip, and we listened to the episode where he talked to Rich Roll, I think it is. And he apparently for years has been sleeping in a tent because, and not because he has problems sleeping with his wife or anything, or not that he has problems with his wife, but he finds he sleeps way better in a tent on the deck. And that's just what he does all the time. I think probably if more couples slept separately, they would both get better sleep. I personally do believe that. Yeah.
Okay. I think if you bring this up with women, oftentimes, from what I've noticed, it sounds like a ridiculous idea, something that they are strongly opposed to. But I've always thought that makes the most sense. Like you can always find a compromise, right? Maybe it's like 4 days out of the week you sleep separately, and then maybe 3 you kind of sleep in the same bed or something. But I think if you're looking for optimal performance, I think it makes the most sense to sleep separately. But I guess maybe this is where people give and take then.
Maybe those 60s sitcoms had the right idea with the separate beds.
I think it was actually common practice way before, like maybe before the 19th century, I believe. It's only been in the last 100 years or so. I think that's become more common to sleep in the same bed now. But that is a whole different take. So if you are opinionate about this, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Let us know on Twitter at Asian Efficiency, or email us at support at asianefficiency.com. I'm happy to hear your thoughts on it as well. As always, we like to end our episodes with an action step. So based on today's episode, one of the things that we would recommend that you do is to start having a simple sleep tracking routine starting tonight. So download one of the apps that we talked about, or start using pen and paper, whatever suits you best, and just try it out. See how it goes for about a week, and what kind of insights you can get from it, and what you can use to improve your quality of sleep. Next week, Brooks is talking to Alexis Hasselberger, a productivity and time management coach. So you definitely don't want to miss that, especially if you work in corporate America or work in the corporate world. And we also have all the links that we mentioned here in the show notes. You can find them at theproductivityshow.com/418. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next Productive Monday.